All right, hello everybody. Welcome back to another video. We have another clip from the debate. In this one, we cover non-Western philosophy. He claims that there is no profound non-Western philosophy. I get him to concede that there is profound non-Western philosophy. Then he shifts us into AI, and we debate a little bit on AI. I kept that in. I ended up cutting it off before we veered into immigration, because I'll probably just make another video on that, because we ended up talking about immigration for like an hour or two. But so that's why it ends where it does. But yeah, in this one we talk about, again, non-Western philosophy, AI, Indian influence, and STEM. And that's about it if I remember. But yeah, you'll see. Because you're going to watch the full thing, right? I can tell. You're going to comment and subscribe and like and do all that great stuff. But yeah, without further ado, we'll get started and see you. Do you even want to do, I mean, we can do the philosophy. I think it's pretty obvious that there's been non-Western philosophy that is profound. I think it's pretty obvious that Egyptians were not white in any normal sense of the term. So we can hit on those if you want. It's up to you.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Which one do you want to do first?
I think that most foundational, like other societies also developed interesting philosophical systems, but I think most of the rationalism and foundational philosophy that we built successful societies on came from European heritage.
Well, obviously, I'm not going to disagree that the philosophies that we built societies on came from us.
But I think, you know, is there any important philosophical concepts that society couldn't live without that
I don't
came
think there's
from
nearly any philosophical
somewhere
concept
else
that society can't live without. That's not really the job of philosophy.
Well, I mean, you need a certain philosophical framework to be able to do science, for example. And
okay, but science isn't required to live. We live for a very long time without science.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm saying a philosophical concept that has impact on the way that we would like to live and that most people would like to live. You know, there's if your philosophy is to just live in the woods and eat bugs, I mean,
well,
you're
that's
allowed
an
to have
empirical
that
question, and
philosophy.
I don't think we know what, you know, that would require like surveying the world and seeing what they want. So when you say, is there something that most people would want? I don't know. I don't think any of us know that now. And when you say what we would want, well, that's just circular. Of course, we're going to want what we want, and we want what we created. So again, if you're analyzing Western philosophy by Western standards and non-Western philosophy by non-Western standards, you're running into another problem of circularity, kind of like you did earlier. But on top of that, even by that standard, there are works of philosophy that have gained the intersubjective approbation of Westerners. You know, The Art of War by Sun Tzu, Buddhism is a philosophy, and that's hugely popular in the West, especially amongst a lot of people on the left. And so even if you're talking about like what we like, we adopt a lot of their philosophy too. And then if you're in terms of what they like, Confucianism is still extremely influential in China, and the rise of China is just corroboration for the philosophical potency of their system, which stresses collectivism. And collectivism arguably is proving a pretty powerful opponent to individualism in the West.
Yeah, no, I think there is something to be said for collectivism. But I mean, collectivism was also explored by Western thought. It's
Sure.
Lost favor.
But it was
And
independently explored in China. And that
yeah,
was
no, it
you
was, so
said,
there,
has there been any
yeah,
independent philosophical development? And there's an example.
okay, yeah, no, that's fair. In, say, regions with low IQ, like
Yeah, sure. I already
Sub-Saharan
said,
Africa, though,
well, for
there
example, I
isn't
said
really.
I haven't looked into Sub-Saharan Africa, but I had the example from the Aztecs. If you know anything about Stoicism, they actually developed a philosophy that's basically Stoicism. It has this, I mean, this is quoting from the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy. It says the raison d'etre of philosophical inquiry was to provide humans with practical answers as to what the Aztecs identified as the defining question of human existence. How can we maintain our balance while walking upon the slippery earth? Aztec philosophers addressed this question against an assumed metaphysics which held that the cosmos and its human inhabitants are constituted by and ultimately identical with a single vivifying, eternally self-generating and self-regenerating sacred energy. Knowledge, truth, value, righteousness, beauty were defined in terms of the aims of humans, maintaining their balance as well as the balance of the cosmos. Every moment and aspect of this human life was meant to further the realization of this aim. If you know what Stoicism is, Stoicism has the same conception of the universe as a cosmic entity of which we form a part, and of which our aim is to maintain the balance of that entity. And Stoicism obviously was very popular. It helped solidify power in Rome. If you read Sheldon Wallen, he talks about how Stoicism formed a universalism that allowed Rome to integrate the peoples of the various areas of the Roman Empire. And so when you have a philosophy that so closely mirrors that, I would say that there's an example of a low IQ society forming a philosophy that is pretty potent and is mirrored in the West, and it was independent.
I'm, this is, I suppose, a little bit subjective, but I would accept that is the case. But I would say, the philosophical framework of society that moves society, like a keeping an accurate representation of history.
They had that. Did you not hear the quote I said from?
They did have that, but I'm saying they did discover aspects of this, but these were also developed by European philosophers.
Sure, they both developed. I'm not the one saying anyone only developed. I'm saying a lot of different people developed this.
But there was no. What I'm trying to say is there was nothing brought in to European philosophy that allowed us to overcome some sort of technological.
That's not true at all.
hurdle.
Military theory has hugely been influenced by the art of war.
It has been influenced by the art of war, but I don't know that those were completely unique to the art of war. I think they're just
for that. Let's see when the Art of War was published. Art of War, originally written ancient China, 5th century BC. It couldn't have been influenced by in the 5th century BC. That was when philosophy was just getting its start in the West. 585 BC is when Thales, so that's 6th century BC. But you don't really get the culmination of Greek philosophy until the end of the 5th century BC with Plato.
Okay, I actually think I probably would concede that one to you because I know it is actually quite influential. So that's a fair point, but I think you don't see things like that from low IQ.
Then you would have to say that Stoicism. You disagree with the scholarly consensus that Stoicism was a very important Hellenistic philosophy for maintaining order in Rome. Because
no, it was, but it wasn't introduced to Europeans.
Well,
they independently did come to.
Okay, so then what you're saying is that both of them produced a valuable philosophy independently.
Well, but yes, they both produced a valuable philosophy independently, but it wasn't. We weren't learning this from them. They,
you cut out a little bit. I don't know if you said something.
They were able to make progress, philosophical progress. I'm not suggesting that there was no philosophy,
but
they didn't.
It's a little bit weird to say we didn't learn from them when we burned down the library that contained their works because they were pagan or they were non-religious. They weren't Christian, rather. Sorry.
That's certainly possible. That there would have been something in there for us to learn, but. Again, I come back to just they've had millennia since then. Well, a millennia and a little bit.
Who?
No, I guess not. No, I was going to say Mesoamericans. They've had hundreds of years to build on the technology and civilization that they were introduced to at that point, and their contributions have been pretty limited.
That's not really true. Mexico is pretty geopolitically important for the United States.
It is, but you don't.
We've even considered transitioning chip manufacturing to Mexico.
But that's just because there's a certain level of competence and it's cheap labor.
That may be the case, but you said that they haven't contributed. That's contributing. I mean, they
Uh,
manufacture most of our cars now. I mean, like a large portion of our cars now. They are a geopolitically important nation. Not only that, they're pretty wealthy. I mean, if you look at GDP, they rival a bunch
What?
of European nations. They're set to take over most of Europe by 2050 in terms of GDP.
Um, I'm gonna just look up inventions from Mexico.
Well, but now you're talking about
Uh,
past. I'm talking about projections.
um, Actually, they invented birth control and color television, but anti-graffiti paint. You know, you look at the population of Mexico and you look at the population of Canada and you look at their historic contributions um, to the science and
Do you think that they had
technology.
the same history? Mexico was kind of colonized. The other one was the colonizers. Do you think that hinders your ability to make contributions?
I mean, how I'm not a profession. Yeah, I'm not that proficient in Mexican history. What I probably need to know more about it to know the extent of the colonization.
Not only that,
But
but they're honestly pretty close in terms of GDP. And Mexico is definitely on a more upwards trend. Mexico is near 1.8 trillion. Canada's 2.1 trillion. And if you look at the graph, it's clear that Mexico is moving up at a faster rate. And projections corroborate this. I mean, Mexico's set not only to pass Europe in terms of GDP, but obviously Canada as well.
yeah, well, Canada's set to have a minority white population in the next couple years too.
Mexico
So
definitely has a minority white population.
yeah, but what is the population of Mexico? Like I said, we've got around 40 million people here.
I don't know, like 100 and something million. Let's see.
Yeah, I'm just trying to look it up.
129,
But
so like
huh?
129, so less than half
120?
of no, yeah, 129. So less than half of the United States. And they're doing pretty good.
It just cut out for a second there, but you said it was 120 million?
Yeah, 129 million.
Okay. But so, you know, they're moving up, we're moving down, but our white population has been decimated. I
Sure,
think
but they're
I
not
think
even white, so
yeah, but
it's a little bit of a weird.
they're also the recipient of a lot of industry that moves there from the United States. Like how much of that
So is China.
innovation. Yeah, that's the same with China. But China's they've kind of taken the reins themselves to some extent, you know.
Sure, after decades of foreign investment being poured into China.
Yeah. I mean China realistically for their advantages, the innovation that comes out of China is pretty surprisingly small compared to European countries and especially the United States. But you know, I don't think that's guaranteed to remain that way. But
I mean, yeah,
you
they
know,
have a
if
different system, centralized and stuff.
you still see the frontier technological inventions and developments coming from white people.
I don't agree with that.
And
Again, it matters that half of Fortune 500 companies were founded by immigrants, and most of those immigrants are not going to be white.
but like a Fortune 500 company could also just be, you know, it could be Vivek Ramaswamy scamming people. You
What
know what
company
I mean?
he
Like
doesn't own a Fortune 500 company.
I don't know the details about him, but isn't he a
He did like a rug
multimillionaire?
pull, but that's a little
Yeah.
different than founding a Fortune 500 company.
Well, when I look at AI, you know, AI's the sort of revolutionary new technology, and that's been almost entirely created by white people.
That's not true. Most of the
Um,
STEM workers are disproportionately immigrants, and they're the ones who are working on AI.
I
Also, I
mean,
mean, if you look at the companies, a lot of them are owned by Jews. So unless you're considering Jews white,
no, I'm not. But you know,
Israel is
that's
pretty advanced in regards to AI. China has their own AI. I mean, AI is kind of ubiquitous. It's becoming ubiquitous, at least.
yeah. But the invention and initial development was all white people.
I
Um,
don't agree with that either. It depends on where you are starting the story. You could go back and
yeah,
say, like, some people start the story of AI with Ada Lovelace in the 1800s. I'm not, yeah, if you do that, you're going to get mostly white people. But I
yeah.
think that that's very, to prognosticate that, hey, machines one day might be able to speak. I don't think that's the beginning of AI.
Um, yeah, you had Dartmouth workshop.
Yep,
You got
that's.
John
And
McCarthy,
again, if
Alan
you look
Turing,
at that, especially during that time, when was the Dartmouth Workshop? This is like, was that
the
the
50s.
80s, 50s, or something like that? You're going to have a
Yeah,
lot of Jewish people in those universities, especially as AI starts to become more developed. Because, yeah, conceptually, you could say with like people like Turing, we had the foundation of AI laid, but it was not really for many more decades that we had AI begin to develop. During that time, what was happening was something called GoFi, which is good old fashioned AI. And that is symbolic AI that's based off of the modulation of symbols with if then conditionals. It's completely different than the AI that we have now, which is based more off of probability and linear algebra. And that doesn't get going until the 80s and 90s
yeah,
when symbolic AI proved kind of a failure.
yeah. But I mean, even now, you are correct that like OpenAI is Sam Altman is very Jewish. Uh,
Then you
but
have your Zuckerberg and stuff like that. They're
yeah,
producing their
they weren't
own.
really at the forefront
Not
of
the
it though.
sure the
They've kind of,
forefront, yeah.
you know, jumped on as things have gone along. But even OpenAI, um, you know, Musk was involved in founding that and got it started, and then he left because Sam Altman and him didn't get along.
Yeah, I don't
But
know though that we can even I would say even for Sam Altman to be fair, I don't think either of these people can really be attributed with the technological development that happens in their companies. It's going to be mostly the workers.
no, that I agree with that. But you know, when I thought, I don't know if you've heard of Computer File. It's like they talk to different computer engineers about different things. The engineers are pretty much always white guys. You know, it's the people who seem to be making uh,
Doesn't it make sense that the
progress.
representatives, like the speaking representative, is not going to be some Indian guy who can barely speak English?
I don't. I do check, you know, Indian videos out sometimes, and I never see them at the forefront of any kind of field of thought. It's like women too. Like you know, when you're interested in learning about a new field of thought, you just never see them exploring it. I do see Jewish people doing that, but it's pretty much like Jewish people and white people.
I'm not sure what you
Um,
mean. Like, what are you saying? I didn't follow that
um,
quite well.
no, that's fair.
Are you saying that like the founders of most fields? Or are you saying that thought leaders in fields are Jewish and white? Or
Yeah, I would say thought leaders in different fields.
again, I think that's going to
Um,
be a consequence of the fact that a lot of these Indian immigrants are both new and you know they're not as well adapted to speaking. You could say that Jewish people are more adapted to transmitting ideas as a consequence of their high verbal IQ, and so they're going to end up in those front-facing positions. But when you look at the statistics of the STEM workers themselves, they are disproportionately Indian.
yeah, but those they're working at like a they're not leading the field. They're doing like
Not
backfill code.
nor are the quote unquote thought leaders like who are the thought leaders in AI? I mean, it's going to be people who are more front facing and less technically competent. They're more philosophers, if anything. A lot of these people who are the thought leaders in AI, people like Bostrom, I mean, he's kind of, people laugh at him, but he's one of the big guys who talks about AI. Eliezer Yudkowsky. These people are less technical thinkers. They're more philosophers who are prognosticating about the instantiation of the tech. It's just kind of different.
Yeah, I mean, I've just yet to see any evidence that
Well, no, I gave you evidence. You're disregarding the evidence on account of basically just an assertion.
what
You can't say it's
what
not evidence that Indians are disproportionately likely to take up these positions where AI is being developed. You can't say that's not evidence that Indians are influential in developing AI. It's obviously evidence. Even if you say it's weak evidence because of your reinterpretation of it, it's still evidence.
I don't see a lot of good projects coming out where there's a lot of Indian people involved with it. They are disproportionately involved with it.
How many projects are you
But
looking at the demographics?
like they're involved with Windows development, and they've become increasingly involved in the development of the Windows operating system, and I have seen it
And
become
Google. I
less.
mean, is Google still
And
not the
Google.
most used search engine?
It is, but it is indisputably becoming immeasurably worse than it was,
Then why
you
has
know.
a competitor not arisen? Why are not all the smart white people getting together and creating a competitor?
Well, so this is, I mean, part of the problem is white people aren't allowed
They don't have to do it on
to
an explicitly
associate.
ethnic basis.
Yeah, and you do see some of that transpire, but then because of the monopoly that these big companies have, they buy up the smaller companies, or use other maneuvers to block them from being able to get into the market. And I mean, that is just
I
partly a
feel like
problem with
the introduction of TikTok just kind of falsified that notion that there's some monopoly. In fact, the tech world is one of the least monopolized areas in terms of the ability to grow. You could say that for you're not going to create a media corporation that rivals, CNN or something in your backyard, but you might actually create a tech giant in your garage. I mean,
Well, so, but some of these things take time. Steam OS, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it is, I believe, going to be a strong contender for stealing some of Microsoft's market share in the operating system department.
we'll see. I mean, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, we will.
But as things are, Indians are overrepresented in the positions where they actually develop these things. They are behind the largest, technological companies that exist. And insofar as they are, they do play a role in why things are the way they are. And so you can't say they're not influential.